Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal, Dahiya, and you're watching the news where we bring you all the detailed developments across the world and in India. But let's begin with the headlines first. Adapt yourself to changing world and times. Prime Minister Modi advises officers on Civil Services Day, exhorts them not to compromise on unity and integrity of the country. Terrorism, biggest form of human rights violation, asserts Union Home Minister Amit Shah on 13th Foundation Day of NIA, emphasizes zero tolerance of government on terror. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson arrives on two-day visit to India, pays tribute to Mahatma Gandhi at Sabarmati Ashram, summit with Prime Minister Modi tomorrow. 400th Prakash Parv of Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji at Red Fort in New Delhi. Prime Minister Modi to address the nation from Red Fort today. Russia hands Ukraine fresh demands to end conflict, rejects Zelensky's proposals. Moscow intensifies attacks on Mariupol. Best time to invest in India as nation is on path of growth and government is carrying out deep economic reforms, says INB Minister Anurag Thakur. And another quick news, Union Minister Nitin Gadkari lays a foundation stone of 33 national highway projects in Chhattisgarh. Health Minister stresses need to integrate indigenous medical systems. National Apprenticeship Mela 2022 held at more than 700 locations across the country. Ladakh Agriculture Department receives a Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration. Solar water heaters distributed to beneficiaries in Kargil. Vijay Kumar Dev takes oath as Delhi's new State Election Commissioner. India sends 40,000 metric ton of diesel under line of credit to help Sri Lanka deal with the power crisis. Sri Lanka's opposition party introduces constitutional amendment bill to abolish presidential system. Indian national killed, 7 injured in oxygen plant blast in Kathmandu. And after that quick look at some important news, let's now look at some interesting, important developments in detail as well. Prime Minister Modi said there cannot be any compromise on integrity and unity of the country. Prime Minister Modi conferred Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration on Civil Services Day. Addressing the event, PM Modi said the nation was built by all those who followed the path of innovation with the mantra of nation first. He also added that governance reforms should be the goal and civil servants should work towards bringing change in the life of the common man.
देश की एकता, देश की अखंडता, उसमें हम कोई कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं कर सकते। स्थानीय स्तर पर भी हम जब भी कोई निर्णय करें, वो निर्णय कितना ही लोक लुभावना हो, वाहवाही बटोरने वाला हो, कितना ही आकर्षक लगता हो, लेकिन एक बार उस तराजू से भी उसको तोल दीजिए कि मेरा ये छोटे से गांव में कर रहा हूं जो निर्णय है, कहीं वो मेरी देश की एकता अखंडता के लिए रुकावट बनने वाला है, तो मैं कोई बीज तो नहीं बोल रहा हूं।
Union Home Minister Amit Shah on Thursday described terrorism as the biggest human rights violation while stating that its elimination is necessary to protect human rights. Addressing the 13th National Investigation Agency Day program in New Delhi, Amit Shah asked NIA to work with full determination to curb terrorism. He added that the Modi government has adopted a zero-tolerance policy towards terrorism and is working to root out this menace from India. The Home Minister asserted that the government is ready to provide all kinds of support to strengthen the NIA.
आतंकवाद से बड़ा मानव अधिकारों का उल्लंघन करने वाला कोई चीज हो ही नहीं सकता। आतंकवाद इटसेल्फ मानव अधिकार का उल्लंघन करने वाला। अब हमने संगठनों के साथ साथ व्यक्तियों को भी आतंकवादी घोषित करने का भारत में पहली बार अधिकार एनआईए को दिया है और अब तक 36 व्यक्तियों को आतंकवादी घोषित कर दिया गया है। एक नए प्रकार की शुरुआत है।
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh exhorted US companies to take advantage of the policy initiatives taken by NDA government in India and carry out joint research and development, manufacturing and maintenance of defense equipment to achieve the vision of Make in India, Make for the World. He was addressing the members of American Chamber of Commerce in India virtually during its 30th annual general meeting today.
I received very positive response from our American colleagues to our keenness for co-development, co-production and investments in research and industry in India. Each successive interaction under the scope of the 2+2 dialogue that we have had in the recent years has opened new opportunities and newer areas of cooperation.
Global growth momentum has been dampened by prolonged inflation, supply chain disruption, volatility in energy markets and investor uncertainty. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman told this at the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting in Washington. Nirmala Sitharaman said G20 is well placed to catalyze international policy coordination to deal with macroeconomic consequences and called for proactive collective efforts towards protecting economies. Sitharaman arrived in Washington on Monday for the IMF World Bank Spring Meetings 2022. She also met John Neufer, President and CEO of the Semiconductor Industry Association, on the sidelines of IMF World Bank Spring Meeting 2022. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson arrived in Ahmedabad on Thursday on his two-day visit to India. He was received by Gujarat Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel and Governor Acharya Devvrat at the airport. The visiting Prime Minister was given a grand welcome by troops who performed traditional Gujarati dance and music along the 4-kilometer route to his hotel in the city. Johnson also met industry leaders in the city, including Gautam Adani. Energy transition, climate action, aerospace and defense cooperation were some of the topics that came up for discussion. The British Prime Minister visited the manufacturing unit of British construction company JCB in Panchmahal. He expressed hope that the free trade agreement can be completed with India by the end of this year.
The living bridge between the UK and India really been so strong. And just on this trip, we've got about £1 billion worth of investment coming from India into the UK. They're the second biggest investor in the UK. That investment alone is going to drive 11,000 jobs. We're hoping to complete another free trade agreement with India by the end of the year, by the autumn.
The British Prime Minister also visited the under-construction Gujarat Biotechnology University campus in Gandhinagar. The university is being built in collaboration with the University of Edinburgh, United Kingdom. In Gandhinagar, Boris Johnson visited the Akshardham temple before leaving for Delhi for the second leg of his India visit. Boris Johnson also visited Mahatma Gandhi's ashram in Sabarmati on Thursday. He is the first British Prime Minister to visit the ashram, where he stayed for about 30 minutes. Johnson wrote in the visitor's book describing Mahatma Gandhi as an extraordinary person. He said or laid stress on the principles of truth and non-violence to make the world a better place. Johnson's next stop was Hriday Kunj, where Mahatma Gandhi used to stay. He visited Meera Kutir, where Gandhi's English-born follower Madeline Slade, also known as Meeraben, lived. The ashram trustees presented him with 2 books and a replica of the spinning wheel. One of them, A Guide to London, written by Mahatma Gandhi, was never published. And in other national news, Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla met Nguyen Van Nan, a party secretary of Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam on Thursday. The Vietnamese leader thanked India's leadership for the cooperation and support in fighting the COVID pandemic. Referring to the centuries-old religious cultural affiliation, he said, "Our shared heritage is the perfect launchpad for cooperation." Defense Minister Rajnath Singh attended the Commanders' Conference in Delhi. Speaking on the occasion, he congratulated the Indian Army for their operational preparedness and capabilities. He also called on the military leadership to be prepared for every challenge in the future, including the challenge of unconventional and anomalous warfare. The Supreme Court has directed status quo on the demolition of buildings in the violence-hit Jahangirpuri area of the national capital till further orders. The court issued notices to the centre and others in the matter. The court said the matter will be listed after 2 weeks, and by then the arguments should be completed. 2 Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists were killed and 3 Jawans injured in an encounter between security forces and terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir's Baramulla district. In the search operation, the terrorists were fired upon. The security forces also gave a befitting reply to the firing of the terrorists. Daily COVID cases touched 2,380 on Thursday. Patients being treated for the virus has increased to 13,433, which is 0.03% of the total cases. The national rate of recovery of patients is 98.76%. The department-related Parliamentary Standing Committee on Science and Technology, Environment, Forest and Climate Change on the Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill 2021 on Thursday submitted its 365th report. The committee chairman, Jairam Ramesh, presented the report to Rajya Sabha chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu through video conferencing. The chairman congratulated the committee for its work. Jairam Ramesh described the Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill 2021 as an important legislation that will further strengthen India's Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Calling India a world leader in wildlife conservation, he expressed hope that the government would accept the committee's recommendations and the amendments will be passed in the upcoming monsoon session of Parliament.
Some of the standing committees we have been watching and had an occasion to mention in Parliament also have been doing an excellent job. And this standing committee, headed by Sri Jairam Ramesh, is one among them. I compliment all of you. And this report received today, it will be taken care and then it will be also published.
It's a very important bill. It brings about major amendments in the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 to fulfill India's commitments to international agreements, to improve the management of protected areas, to address the concerns of the wildlife conservation community, also address the infrastructure needs of the local communities living in and around the protected areas, and in general to strengthen the effectiveness of the Wildlife Protection Act. India is a world leader in wildlife conservation.
We'll take a short break here, but coming up on the other side, increasing wildfires across Western nations are leading to earlier snowmelt and lesser water in rivers. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's begin with all the latest updates from the war front in Ukraine in this half of the news. Ukraine is demanding that the Russian military open a humanitarian corridor from the Azovstal steel plant, the last Ukrainian stronghold in the strategic port city of Mariupol. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister said there are about 1,000 civilians and 500 wounded soldiers who need to be pulled out of Azovstal. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered his forces not to storm the last remaining Ukrainian stronghold in the besieged city of Mariupol. He told them to block the Azovstal steel plant so that not even a fly comes through. Germany has said that it is all set to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of 2022. German Foreign Minister said they will have half Russian oil imports by the beginning of the summer. It planned to reduce them to zero by the end of this year before starting to cut back gas imports gradually. China's credit card processor has refused to work with banks in Russia for fear of being targeted by sanctions over its war on Ukraine, cutting off a possible alternative after Visa and MasterCard stopped serving them. The decision affects Russia's biggest commercial bank and smaller institutions as well. Kiev has reported that 2 mass graves with 9 bodies were discovered in the city of Borodyanka, northwest of the Ukrainian capital. 2 women and a teenager were reportedly among the civilians killed by the Russian occupants. US President Joe Biden is set to announce plans to send additional military aid to help Ukraine fight back against the Russian invasion. Biden will deliver an address at the White House detailing his plans to build on the roughly $2.6 billion in military assistance the administration has already approved for Ukraine. The Luhansk governor has said that Russian forces now control 80% of the region, which is one of the 2 regions that make up the Donbas in eastern Ukraine. One of Russia's stated goals is to expand the territory in the Donbas under the control of Moscow-backed separatists. The Ukraine-Russia conflict is impacting global trade in a variety of ways. While on the one hand, it is disrupting supply chains, on the other, it is shutting down traditional markets for producers. One such instance is the textile industry of Turkey. Let's take a detailed look.
Turkey's textile industry is feeling the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. For Turkey, both Russia and Ukraine are significant trade partners in the textile industry. In 2021, Turkey's garments, textile and leather exports reached $718 million to Russia and $308 million to Ukraine. But textile industry officials say Russia's military operation in Ukraine has already hit the industry and will likely to impact this year's total revenue. Unlike the European Union and the United States, Turkey has opted against imposing sanctions on Russia. So while many global corporations are taking a stand against Moscow and pulling out of Russia, some Turkish companies are benefiting from Turkey's decision to maintain positive ties with Russia. A situation that may not last for too long as the Turkish textile industry prepared for economic losses. As a consequence, some companies are targeting the African market, while others are aiming for new customers in Eastern European countries like Bulgaria and Macedonia.
And time now for some more news from other parts of the world as well. The 2 candidates for the French presidency went head-to-head in their only televised debate ahead of Sunday's second runoff vote. 2-hour and 45-minute debate was the first time the same candidates squared off in 2 consecutive elections, the first being in 2017.
In their live TV debate, French President Emmanuel Macron and far-right leader Marine Le Pen confronted each other on the cost of living, the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war, immigration and climate change. Le Pen termed the cost of living her biggest priority, saying she will cut taxes and no income tax for under 30s. The president called her proposals unworkable. His solution was to impose a cap on prices that he said was twice as effective as dropping sales tax. On the Ukraine-Russia war, Macron said Moscow was going down a fatal path, while Le Pen warned that giving Ukraine weapons could make France a co-belligerent. But both agreed on backing Ukraine and taking in refugees. On immigration, Le Pen wanted to call a referendum on who should stay and who should leave France. She also condemned the anarchic and massive immigration that has contributed to a sense of insecurity in the country. Macron accused her of creating a system of equivalence among Islamism, terrorism and foreigners that would create civil war. Le Pen said Macron was ignorant of the suffering of healthcare workers before COVID-19, as he promised more investment in healthcare. The French president defended his record, saying he steered France through challenges and aimed to make the country a stronger country. On climate change, Le Pen labelled Macron a climate hypocrite, while the president called his opponent a climate skeptic. Both contenders also agreed on building more nuclear power stations. Meanwhile, ahead of the Sunday election, the latest opinion poll till April 18th placed Macron 54% and Le Pen at 46%. The French presidential election will be held on Sunday. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
The Solomon Islands Prime Minister confirmed on Wednesday that his government has signed a new security agreement with China, but told lawmakers it would not undermine the peace and harmony of our region, as has been feared by the opposition and countries including the United States and Australia.
Prime Minister of Solomon Islands, Manasseh Sogavare, on Wednesday tried to assure his country's neighbors that the security agreement with China will not impact peace and harmony in the region. The Security Pact allows China to send police and military personnel to the Solomon Islands to assist in maintaining social order. It also opens the door for Chinese warships to stop at the port for logistical replenishment, giving rise to worries of a possible Chinese naval base on the doorstep of Australia and New Zealand. Micronesia and other Pacific island nations have also expressed concerns about the deal. The US is sending 2 top officials to the Solomon Islands. This follows a visit last week by an Australian senator to express their concerns that China could establish a military presence in the South Pacific island nation. China has denied seeking a military foothold in the South Pacific. In his address to Parliament, Sogavare defended the security agreement as being directed entirely to his country's internal security situation. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Prime Minister Modi is participating in the event which is taking place at Red Fort on the occasion of 400th Prakash Parv of Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. Moving on in the international news again, as wildfires increase in number across the western region of the United States, researchers are studying how scorched forests are leading to an earlier snowmelt. Let's listen to the details.
Climate change is fueling the spread of wildfires across the West. But researchers are studying how this is leading to falling water levels in rivers each year. Wildfire torched this California forest last summer. Without the tree canopy, the snow is exposed to more sunlight. Specks of carbon from burnt trees also darken the snow and make it absorb more light, speeding the melting process. Snow melting into rivers earlier than normal leaves less water flowing in the summer when it is most needed. Spring heat waves already melted much of this year's limited snowfall across California and parts of the West. The effect is critical because drought-prone communities rely on melting snow in the spring to replenish reservoirs during drier months. Current water forecasting methods weigh factors like snow density, soil moisture, and also air temperature. As more forests burn, researchers are aiming to show exactly how helpful this information can be. Researchers say the long-term effects of charred forests on snow could fuel the cycle of drought and wildfires, further disrupting how communities plan water supplies in the West. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And in some other news from across the world now, China's President Xi Jinping has said that his government backs talks to resolve international disputes but opposes the use of sanctions. Xi's comments came in a video shown on Thursday at an international forum on the southern island province of Hainan. The president's word marked China's latest attempt to enunciate an approach to Russia's bloody invasion of Ukraine. Beijing has backed Moscow, refusing to call the conflict an invasion and saying Russia was provoked by the expansion of the NATO alliance. World Bank Group President David Malpass said the International Committee needs to take important steps to address the current set of crises facing the global economy, including the war in Ukraine. the ongoing pandemic and rising debt burdens as well. Speaking at the World Bank's press conference, he highlighted how the war is leading to shortages of food and energy and of fertilizer. The World Bank leader said the institution has provided immediate support to help Ukraine and will continue some of the government services by mobilizing nearly $1 billion in emergency financing. Israeli warplanes conducted airstrikes in the central Gaza Strip early on Thursday. The Israeli military said the airstrikes were aimed at a militant site and an entrance of a tunnel leading to an underground complex holding chemicals to make rockets. The military said its planes attacked another Hamas compound after an anti-aircraft missile was fired from Gaza during the initial airstrikes. It said the missile failed to hit its target and no injuries or damage were reported. Crowds returned to Hong Kong Disneyland as it reopened again on Thursday for the fourth time during the coronavirus pandemic. The amusement park remains the same in its attractions but will only allow visitors up to 50% of its capacity. Everyone must use a government tracking app to register before entering, and you cannot get close to Minnie and Mickey Mouse. Workers dressed up as Disney characters are on duty to pose for photo, but visitors have to stay more than a meter away when they get their photos. Queen Elizabeth II is marking her 96th birthday privately on Thursday at Sandringham Estate in eastern England that has offered the monarch and her late husband Prince Philip refuge from the affairs of state. Elizabeth is expected to spend the day at estate's Wood Farm Cottage, a personal sanctuary where she also spent her first Christmas since Philip's death in April 2021. The birthday comes during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee year, marking her 70 years on the throne. And that's all we have in this edition of the news. We'll come back again tomorrow with all the details of developments across the world and in India. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.